For the average person, a home is the most expensive purchase they'll make throughout their life. And in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about the expenses and the structure of buying a home. Now, homes are generally not paid for with cash. That is, it's not a cash transaction because it's such a large amount of money involved. So people borrow money in order to pay for homes. And the borrowing is generally made through banks or other lending institutions. Now, the loan that is made for the purchase of a home is called a mortgage. And generally, banks and other institutions that lend money don't lend the entire purchase price. They will lend a portion of the purchase price. They require that a person make a down payment. Here's what it looks like. The mortgage is found by taking the purchase price and subtracting a down payment, and what's left is the mortgage, the amount of money that the bank is willing to loan to a person for the purchase of a home. Now, the down payment is generally expressed as a percent of the purchase price, and we'll make a calculation about that in just a minute. Let's talk first, though, about another expense in this process. It's called an origination fee. Banks and other lending institutions will often require that a person pay a fee for the whole process, the paperwork process in creating this mortgage. And the origination fee is also based upon a percent. Now, the percent is actually called points. When a bank says, we charge 3 points origination fee, what that means is that they charge 3% of the mortgage as their origination fee. So the origination fee is calculated by taking the amount they're willing to lend to you and multiplying by the number of points as a percent. All right, so to get the origination fee, let's look at a couple of problems. A home costs $90,000 and a bank requires a down payment of 20%. We want to find out how much the down payment amounts to and how much the mortgage amounts to. And in reading through this, it may not be evident, but this 20% really has a hidden operation in it. It's 20% of something, and it's 20% of the $90,000 for this down payment. So we figured the down payment by taking 20% of the purchase price of $90,000. So it's $90,000 times 20%. That's $18,000. So $18,000 is the amount of the down payment. Now, in making the calculations, in writing down what you need to write in order to make the calculation for down payment, origination fee, amount of the mortgage, and all those kinds of things, organize your work in some way. And it doesn't make any difference whether you set up a structure that's horizontal or vertical. It doesn't matter. As long as it's well organized and as long as you don't do most of the calculating off to the side and then come back in and just put answers down. You want to be able to look later at the numbers that are being multiplied, added, subtracted, whatever, in order to arrive at a certain conclusion. So here it's important to write the $90,000, it's important to write this 20%, and we identify the $18,000 as a down payment. All right, let's calculate the B part. How much is the mortgage? Well, the mortgage is just the difference between the cost of the home and the down payment. So we take the cost, the price of the home, the purchase price, and we subtract the down payment. And the mortgage for this home is $72,000. Kind of a funny spelling on mortgage, isn't it? Because the T is silent when we say mortgage. Here's another problem. This one involves origination fee. The same bank, we're talking about the same problem over here, the same bank charges a loan origination fee of 3 points. How much is the loan origination fee? Well, again, this 3 points means 3%, and it's 3% of the amount of the mortgage. So we would take the amount of the mortgage, which we just calculated to be $72,000, and we multiply by 3%. And we find that the amount of the loan origination fee is $2,160. Now let's talk about this loan and how it's paid back. A lot of times mortgages are created for very long periods of time. It's not uncommon for a mortgage to have a term of 30 years, sometimes 15, sometimes, well, whatever. But 30 years is a pretty common amount of time for a mortgage. Now, over this period of time, a borrower is paying back the principal along with some amount of interest all along the way. And banks have a way of calculating a fixed amount of money each month for that overall payback. And we'll make that calculation in just a moment. There are tables that allow us to do that. But it's important to realize that in this fixed payment for 30 years, a certain portion of that payment is for the principal, to repay the principal, and another portion is to pay the interest on that loan. And the amount within each payment for principal and for interest will change throughout the term of the loan. And that only makes sense when you realize that at the very beginning of such a loan, that the person owes all of this large amount of principal, and therefore they're going to pay the most interest in the first few months of such a loan. Now, in the last few months of the loan, they owe less and less money, you see, and therefore they'll be paying less and less interest. So at the end of the term of the loan, they'll pay mostly principal in this payment, but very little interest. In the first part, they're paying mostly interest and very little principal. Well, let's look at the structure of the situation. Now, suppose we're talking about an $80,000 mortgage. Now, this is a different problem than the one before. So we've got an $80,000 mortgage at 7% interest for 30 years. And now let's talk about how this monthly payment is found. Well, one way to find it is to use a chart, and there's actually a chart in your book that allows us to identify this as a multiplier times our mortgage amount in order to find the amount of payment for principal and interest throughout the 30-year term. Now, to describe how we find this number in a chart, the chart is located in the appendix of your textbook. You'll notice that in the chart, along the top, along a top row, there's a row of percent numbers, and that's the interest rate associated with the loan. And along the left-hand side, there are numbers that correlate with the number of years for the loan. And what you do is you just kind of cross-reference the two. You can run horizontally along the row for the term of the loan and cross-reference that with the column associated with the interest rate, and you'll get the number that we have right here, the 0.0066530. All right, and then multiplying here, we find that this is the amount of the payment every month, and this payment has within it both principal and interest. So principal plus interest is $532.24 every month for 30 years. Now, as I mentioned, the portion of this $532.24 that is devoted to principal and the portion devoted to interest changes from month to month. We can actually make a calculation here for the amount of interest in the first month. It's not too difficult. We can just use the interest formula that we talked about earlier. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. In month one, the simple interest, you see we're using our principal of $80,000, that mortgage, for the interest calculation. So the principal is $80,000, the interest rate is 7%, and the time is 1 month, so it's 1/12 of a year. And so the amount of interest is $466.67. Now that means, and let's kind of come back over here, that means that the principal part of this payment plus the interest part of $466.67 is equal to $532.24. Gee, well, knowing that something plus interest is $532.24, we can just do this. We can take $532.24 and subtract the interest and find out how much principal is being paid during that first month. Let's do that. the monthly payment is $532.24. The amount of interest paid in the first month, we found up here, is $466.67, and the difference here is $65.57. So that's the amount of principal that's being paid in the first month. You know, we could go through and from month to month, we could make the calculation of interest and principal. Now, we don't have to do that, but it's kind of interesting from a mathematical standpoint to realize that there is a rather simple basis for all of this complication in having a mortgage. Now, one other expense associated with mortgage payments a lot of times is property tax. That is, property taxes are paid by homeowners to local governments. And a lot of times, lending institutions will collect that property tax from the borrowers of the money for a house all along the way during a year and make the payment of the property tax for the homeowner to make sure that it gets paid. Now, let's suppose that in this circumstance that property taxes are for the year, let's say $600. Now let me come back over here and tell you what I'm talking about. That let's say that for this home, that the property tax for the year is $600. Now, in order for the bank to collect this amount of money over the course of an entire year, they would collect 1/12 of it each month. And 1/12 of 600 is $50. So they're going to add $50 to the monthly payment, you see, in order to collect this every month for at least for the first year. It might change. If the property taxes change for the next year and the next and the next, then this amount that is being added will change a little bit as well. But $50 may be added then to the overall monthly payment. So rather than the monthly payment being $532.24, it would be $582.24. It's just important to realize that property tax is sometimes an add-on in this payment for principal and interest to a lending institution.